Hello and welcome back to another episode of the StartWell Podcast. Once again, I am Kasim in studio here on King Street West in downtown Toronto. This time joined by my guest, Michael Masangkay, who is the founder, owner of a really interesting company we're going to dig into, which is called Top Drone.
Yes.
Welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
I love the idea of drones, just conceptually the idea of having these unmanned vehicles that we can kind of remotely control. Let's just jump straight into it.
Sure.
So I'd love to hear how you became a drone pilot to start with.
Well, I used to be into video games a lot when I was a kid. I dropped it after, you kind of grow up a little bit, and I couldn't have time to do it. Especially in my line of work, there's just no time.
So when you dropped video games, what was the console that was your last console?
Ooh, PlayStation 3.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I was going to say Super Nintendo. That was mine.
Yeah.
I'm old school, man.
No, I was still going. I was still going for some time. But it was mainly sports games.
Okay.
So it was NBA 2K for sure, and NHL. So it was only sports games for the most part.
Yeah.
But when I've been in the industry, I've been in the film and television industry now for, I guess, from 2006.
Okay.
So it's been some time, and I would travel a lot. I before the pandemic, I was traveling quite a bit, and during that time, I also had a family, and I wanted to travel with them. So the first time I brought them out, you don't want to be, I'm already Asian as is. I don't want to propagate a myth and have another DSLR and be, taking photos. So I was like, I want to get a little different angle.
Okay.
So I was looking at the price point, and it looked like getting into the marketplace was about the same price as getting, a consumer drone. So like a small little DJI Mavic Air.
Right.
Like loud.
Wait, so this is only a couple of years ago.
This is just this would be 3 to 4 years ago now.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's been relatively
But that was just
time.
about the time where the kind of like prosumer models were dropping below $1,000, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So it was becoming a lot more accessible for people to to really take a hold of it and just have fun with it.
Yeah.
And during that time, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go and take this with me on my travels, and with my family. So I took it to Cannes Film Festival.
Oh,
It was
nice.
the first time, right? And I was scared because, you fly it over the festival.
Well, you were flying it on the Quasette, like over the
Yeah,
tents?
so I have friends who are who had the suites, the penthouse suites at the Miramar and at the Grand Hotel.
Mhm.
So they knew that I had a drone, and they were like, "Why don't you come fly it off our balcony?" So I was like, "I want to say no to that, I can come and hang out in your penthouse suite." So so I launched it there, and I got some amazing shots, and it's just but the thing there is that the French military there, they're scouring the streets to keep it safe, obviously. So we had to kind of be really high up in the air so you couldn't be heard, because that drone is really loud. It's a high pitch hum or noise that it makes. So you got to keep it nice and high to keep it out of earshot. After that, then I met my family and went to Venice.
Okay.
So I met them there, and I flew over the Grand Canal. I woke up nice and early, and I got footage of flying over the Grand Canal at 5 a.m. Everything's just quiet, and there's some boats floating through, and that was gorgeous. I was starting to fall in love with it a lot. And then I went to Rome, and I was iffy about that. So
Yeah, because it's dense, it's busy.
It's dense, it's busy. Yeah. So at the hotel we were staying at, this is Milan. So I flew it there, no problem, got whatever. And then Rome was like, okay, you know what? I should start looking into this a little bit more, right? I was starting to enjoy it more, and it was harkening back to my video game days. So the dexterity of the thumbs and doing all the movements and controlling it was like, oh, this is an amazing vantage point.
And of course, this is family travel, so it didn't take you away from sometimes when I don't know, I'm like this, if I'm trying to make a film about my trip and be a little bit artiste about it, then it can I can get pretty good about capturing clips
Yeah.
in this like verite way, like I'm not really there, and I'm just hanging out.
Yeah.
And I'm taking little clips, and no one even knows when they see the film. Like family at the end of the day, when I'm like, "Hey, I made a movie of today," they're surprised that I haven't got that footage.
Yeah.
But with a drone, you have to be, of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to take in consideration. I mean, your surroundings for
Yeah.
sure when you're launching, right? So that's definitely one of those major things. So it wasn't too intrusive. I was trying to make it so that I wasn't taking away from our trip, by all means. But it got to a point where it's like I got to start taking this a little more seriously if I'm enjoying this much.
Yeah.
So when I came back here, I looked into it, and this is 2018. Yeah, this is 2018. And I was looking into it, and I was like, oh, okay, it's not bad to get your license. Okay, about $1,000. Okay.
Where do you get your license? Or at that time, where'd you get it from?
So there's one of our like partner schools training centers is our Pass Center. They used to be Alto Helix. So they do industrial applications and drones, but they train the fire departments and police force. They consult with Transport Canada for their regulations for drones as well. At that time, back then, the regulations were a lot more loose in terms of it wasn't really there to regulate consumers or enthusiasts. It was there to regulate operators, people who are in business for drones. Right.
Okay.
Now that it was becoming a more consumer accessible, then they had to change up the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to really dive in and change it, and I knew that was coming. So they were changing the regulations, which was going to be June 1st, 2019. And I was getting licensed and certified 2018. So I was looking at it, and because I'm in the film and television industry, people will ask me, okay, can you get some shots here and there for us? Sure. And I was like, it really makes a difference. Like independent films are on such a budget.
Yeah.
Gone are the days that you would get a helicopter. Well,
Right.
you can still get a helicopter. It's going to cost you a fortune.
Yeah.
Fuel and insurance and the helicopter and the gear going on and, everything that goes along with it.
Planning it must be.
Yeah. And the clearances that you got to get, right? And you can't even get the shot that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So what I discovered with the drone was that you can go from micro to macro so quickly to establish a character, not even just to establish an environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? To establish a city or establish an environment, you can establish a character in the environment with the drone. Where a helicopter, you can't come into the street level and then fly out to reveal where that environment is.
Sure.
So with the drone, you could.
Yeah, it's agile. Even
Agile.
compared to like jibbing in
Yeah.
some cases. It's
Yeah,
easier
and
to use a drone.
That's the thing is that productions are like getting to the point where they're like, okay, you know what? We don't have to get the jib. Oh, we don't need the Russian arm. We can do it with the drone.
Russian arm.
And it's just like,
Wait,
you can't
wait,
just
break it
replace
down.
that.
Break it down. What is the Russian arm?
So it's on a truck, right? And it's swinging. So there's an operator on the back of a truck, and
Yeah.
it's an arm that swing across while you're driving. So there was like one film that we were getting. They were asking us to mimic that motion. There was a fire truck going down the street, and then we would have to go from the front of the truck, and then go to the side of the truck and focus on the fireman driving the truck.
Yeah.
And then fall back, and then just follow behind the truck. It's a complicated move.
It is. Yeah.
And to do it with a drone is even more complicated because you got to match speeds. You've got to make sure that there's no oncoming traffic. You got to clear off the street. They didn't even clear off the street. So it was like super complicated.
Can you, by the way, well, I'll let you continue because I have a million questions about the technicality of producing this sort of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, so it's just a lot of productions are now trying to replace a lot of the equipment that would normally, skyrocket your budget
Mhm.
from a production standpoint, and replace it with drone. At the same time, a lot of people they're not familiar with how to operate the drone and how to do it legally, how to do it safely, it entails to be able to operate a business that deals with just drones and the operation of drones for film.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that go into it. So we found ourselves like there's the market because it's accessible to consumers. There's a lot of competition.
Right.
That
There's a lot of like two dudes with a drone.
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't care about the law. We'll get that shot for you for $75.
Yeah, and the client doesn't want to be sideswiped or blindsided by a lawsuit. It's like that's the last thing they want. If it's a production that doesn't mind that, then that's not necessarily the client that we want either.
Yeah, like no one wants to be with Alec Baldwin in a desert.
Yeah, I mean that is that's a bad one. I mean that one was. There's a combination of factors on that one that we can like go down a rabbit hole on for sure. But I mean, even productions like that, we'd love to be on productions like that.
Yeah.
No, by no means are we saying that that's bad. But yeah, in that case, there were some things that were cutting corners. Let's just say.
But yeah, so suffice it to say, you saw a market opportunity for like a legitimate company that's a drone operator to be there, but slicing through the noise was going to be a little difficult to get to the clients to say this is the value proposition.
Because they were looking to make an example, because they were putting the new regulations into place on June 1st, 2019. They were looking to make examples of people who were, operating illegally. So then they could make them an example and say, hey, you're going to get fined this much money. And now it's going to just, kind of quell the masses in terms of flying or operating illegally. So when the thing that, I've always been more of a marketing guy. I understand good creative, but I also understand that there has to be a return on investment when it comes to your marketing, right? So we were just like, we need something to really catapult us into an area where people are like, okay, these guys are credible. They know how to operate safely. They're credible, and their footage looks great, right? And our footage, we knew was going to look great because of our experience in film and television for quite some time in terms of creating cinematic shots, making sure that there's a narrative and you're able to follow that and the shot is composed in that manner, right? To serve the narrative. So that's our background. So then giving us the tool of drone is just like, okay, this is amazing. So we knew that there was operators in the industry that had been doing it for years, 10 years, 15 years. The OGs of like drone operations, right? But now that the regulations were coming into play, it was like, we're all at zero. We're all going to start from the same level. They had to get the same level of certification and licensing that we had to get as brand new operators.
Sure.
So that gave us an idea, because I was like, you know what? This is an opportunity for us to be able to capture the market share because we can market better than probably they can. Where they're just about the operation. We're about the operation, but also the marketing.
They're like technical companies.
Yeah, they're more technical companies. Yeah. So I was thinking from a publicity standpoint, okay, how can we really catapult? So, I mean, the name of the company is Top Drone.
Right. And your logo is like
it's
Tom Cruise styles.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting for the cease and desist, Like, put it on the frame and put it up there, You can buy us. No problem. Sure, that can happen. Yeah. So it was always about the marketing. So right at that time, the Toronto Raptors won the championship. Right? And the parade was right after the regulation switched over on June 1st. It was June 5th or I think 5th or 9th or something like that. So we knew that if we were able to get up into the air legally, that we can get the greatest shots.
Yeah.
So did everyone else who wasn't professional.
Right.
Because they thought, oh, I'm going to get this amazing vista. I'm just going to shoot the crowd and the parade and the fireworks and everything like that. But they didn't know how to get clearances. Whereas anyone who had been operating for years was like, I'm not even going to touch that because I don't know really what the new regulations are about, and just getting familiar. So it's like, this is an opportunity for us to just like penetrate through that whole thing, because we could distinguish ourselves from those who used to be and those who are trying to be.
Right. And
then gain instant credibility. And we were the only legal entity flying drones that day.
And that just means that your like footage is safe, right? For relicensing.
Well, our footage is safe. Also, Transport Canada was looking for.
Were they shooting down commercial?
They weren't shooting them down, but they were hunting them down. So there was some fool who operated from, and Sheridan Hotel had let him fly off their balcony.
Okay.
And he crashed his drone.
Oh.
Yeah. And we saw a whole bunch of drones flying in and around the area. And it was just like, we knew that they weren't ready. Like they didn't understand what was happening because they would fly just for the sake of flying, where we knew the moment was to wait for, the players on the buses to be in the spot that they need to be shot, so that we knew we can get the best shot. They were just like, whatever. Once the crowd started roaring, they would throw up the drone and like get out there and like start buzzing around and getting shots. It was just like, they're completely like premature.
Yeah.
So we were just like sitting back and legally operating. We were clearly marked and everything. And we got the shots. And then after that, Toronto Police, Transport Canada, Navigation Canada, they all started asking us questions about who else was operating on that day.
Oh.
Because of that crash, and there were some other people, and they were all, filed, and they were looking to find these people and then fine them, right? In terms of monetary fines. And we were just like, that's not part of our operation.
Yeah.
This is our drone. These are our drones. They were registered here, and this is what our flight path was. This was our ceiling that they had specified. We negotiated with them to know what our limitations were because there were helicopters at like 500 feet. We legally can fly 400 feet, but because of the 3 helicopters that were in the air, we knew that was happening. So, and then the snowbirds were going to be flying over. We knew that was happening. So we knew when to be in the air and when not to be in the air, and what our ceiling, where our operating areas were.
Right.
Whereas all these other drones were just flying errantly all over the place.
Yeah.
So we told them all that, and they were just like, okay, cool, thank you very much. And we were able to say we're the only legal drone operator that day to capture all that footage. So every time someone would like chop us down on social media for our footage, it's kind of like, nope, this is all legal. Here's our clearance. Here's our, it's very easy. So there's a difference in operating drones and flying drones when you're cleared versus you're looking over your shoulder.
Well, especially when you're thinking about commercial content, because that content just from that single shoot, is monetizable for stock or for relicensing through news media outlets and all of that stuff. So if that's part of your business and you're prepared for that and you've got the clearances, you're ready to go. Versus now, again, in this day and age, there's a lot of like crap footage that makes its way onto news reports and so on, and people will quote Twitter for a story. So journalistic integrity is out of the window.
Yeah.
And people
it's not as lucrative as you'd think it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's very interesting to take that approach and then find yourselves as kind of leaders in this commercial space.
Yeah, because at that point, then potential clients were just like, oh, I want to deal with those guys.
Right.
Because I thought that it would be impossible to get that shot.
And so what kind of clients are we talking about? Are we talking about commercial entities, businesses? Or
government, corporate? We could, because we did everything clean.
Yeah.
Government agencies, corporate clients, large corporate clients, where we could walk in there and just say, hey, this is our proposal. And because we're the only ones that can do it properly, and we're operating downtown Toronto. Not a lot of people want to operate downtown Toronto because they're afraid that they'll smack into a building. That's where we live and breathe when it comes to drone operations.
Because you're professional pilots.
Exactly, and we understand what the problem is. I mean, we've seen our fair share of errant flights as well, but because we got all our ducks in a row in terms of paperwork and clearances, we're not afraid of that because it happens. It does happen. Like where a drone will lose its GPS coordinates and it'll start circling, trying to find those, triangulate the 3 points. So then it'll start circling like that. So it's once it gets that, reacquires that signal, it jerks into that direction, then you can do whatever you want. It's not going to respond. So there's things that happen where we've able to experience too, where it's just like, okay, we understand what we have to put into redundancy systems in our processes when it comes to pre-flight checklists and in-flight checklists, or just once you launch, okay, just make sure you have full control of the drone and everything. So there's all these things that we've put into our workflow that ensures that we can then get the shot. It's all about the preparation before.
Right.
and then before you actually do the operation. Really.
Yeah, on logistics, on the operational logistics, and then also on the cinematics.
Yeah.
So you keep saying we. Who?
Mhm.
So who comprises the team?
So I have one other partner, Ryan Coxworthy, and then we have a bunch of people who are pilots and operators that we work with, who are just super skilled, and also in the production, film and television production realm.
Okay.
So that it can't be all done by one person. Like your time is your commodity,
Oh, for sure.
right? So you have to be able to, if the business is going to be scalable, that's why I was like, okay, the brand speaks, right? If the brand speaks, then you can scale it. It's not about you. It's not about me as Michaelangelo. It's about the team and what we can deliver as a team.
And
So
you guys are focused on Toronto, or
we're focused everywhere. So we've collaborated with everyone in North America, into Egypt. We've done projects, everywhere to be able to service our clients. It's just a matter of, that's why we stick so much to the processes and the paperwork. It's like a freight forwarder or a logistics company. They hire the trucks and the truck drivers and their trucks,
Sure.
right? And they deliver the goods, and then you fulfill their contractor. So it's the same idea. It's just scaling it.
Right. So you can source talent
I
globally
can source talent
as you
globally.
need to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now 3-4 years in.
Yeah. So, we've done some really cool jobs up to this point. And before it was just like the business was like, okay, let's do everything drone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like anything and everything that a drone can do, let's get into that. And I was just like, oh my, we're spreading ourselves thin on trying to get leads.
Right.
Right. And
Because it's so applicable that, like,
So
then
applicable.
who are you talking to as potential
exactly.
clients?
It could be anyone.
Right.
It could be everyone. Like
Right.
it's like when the computer was invented and you had the computer. It's just like, anything and everything. Anyone need help from a computer? Okay, well that's our business.
Mhm.
No. That's to take on so much, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So we figured, you know what? Let's just go back to our background, what we're good at. That's really capturing narrative from an aerial standpoint. Because we have the background of being, so my partner Ryan, he's a camera operator. He's done camera ops for all of the HGTV shows, Food Network shows, Netflix shows. So that's his background in terms of production. So he knows what it takes to be on set. I understand what it means to be on set, how to bolt on and be.
Sure.
There's a tact that part of like the Toronto Film School side of what I do is like trying to impart that tact on production, right?
Mhm.
So we have that experience, whereas a lot of operators don't understand that tact. They don't know how to fit in. The production doesn't fit you. You fit into the production.
Well, yeah, and it's worth exploring that a little bit just now. The idea. Okay, so firstly, let's just call it out that your position with the Toronto Film School is the head of production, or
director of production.
Director of production.
Yeah.
And so your familiarity with how kind of like commercial content, or not commercial content, but any type of like professional content gets produced, film content gets produced, is deep. And talking about drones being relatively new technology in terms of people using them to carve out a living, right? It's just the last 5, 6, 7 years. That long? No,
Yeah, I mean,
probably not. Probably
There's-
4 or 5 years.
there's some people that we look up to as inspiration who have made a living on this, and it's just like Toronto's becoming Toronto is becoming a hotbed of production.
Mhm.
English speaking world, Toronto's the hotbed. It's going to
Of
be
film production in general.
film production, content creation. This is a place to be. It's just there's just too many incentives and soft money, and leveraging the dollar, Canadian dollar versus the U.S. dollar. There's just so much skilled labor here, and living standard here in Toronto is conducive to an American city like New York or L.A.
Right.
So
I don't know, man. We don't have the rats that New York has, We don't have the grit, man.
Are you talking about the rats in the industry or the ones on the streets? Because they can be one and the same. But yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting time because it's really becoming a hotbed for production, and you're starting to see the studios pop up everywhere. I mean, StartWell here is in a great location, and really excited for what's going to be coming through here, especially because there's just so much opportunity now.
Sure.
And foreign productions that are coming to Toronto, to Ontario, to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vancouver's great. It's awesome there. I love Vancouver, but they're limited by mountains, water, border. Physically, they can't grow out.
Yeah.
So it's very specific what you want to get there.
Oh, for sure.
Here, I mean, it's like Montreal, Ottawa, okay, French is a big thing for people who are Anglophone to go over there. It's a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
So tendency is to come to Toronto.
No, it's so true. There's so many factors that are going to grow the industry here. I was talking to someone from William White's last week, maybe, or the week before, and we were talking about studio and the operations of, and that's a whole nother podcast, talking about like the shitty economics on operating a studio.
Sure.
I think that'll change in the next little while as the industry strengthens and COVID is over.
Yeah.
But particularly they were telling me about their growth in the last few years and what they're kind of doubling down on, and that whole idea of they built out a backlot. They have a backlot that they built out, just because they know that there's enough demand for different setups that people have, and they're kind of like, well, we'll build it. You don't need to construct that set inside of a warehouse all the time and incur that cost. It's easier, cheaper, and more efficient to have a backlot.
Yeah.
So like there's infrastructure that's being developed to support this growth across the industry, and it paints a good picture, I guess, as context for understanding how the type of cinematography that you guys do will fit into the demands of commercial productions, all sorts of them.
Yeah.
So from your vantage, what do you see, with a few years under your belt now in this business, what do you see as the kind of demand channels that you're focusing on as a company satisfying for this kind of footage?
Yeah, I mean, we were very much going after any and all business that we can get. And, I always tried to operate a business where, it's better to collect $1,000 from 10 people.
Yeah.
Than it is to collect $1 from 1,000 people.
Oh my God. Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Preach on, brother.
Because the level of service that's being demanded of you is the same. So you can quickly spread yourself thin real quick on that, on the ladder. So for us, we started saying, okay, you know what? We're no longer going to fight for the bottom. We're going to make sure that the clients that we take on are reputable,
mm-hmm.
and that speak volumes towards our level of production.
Yeah.
So then we partnered up with Canada's Wonderland, chasing roller coasters. We partnered up with Hotel X to fly through the hotel.
I saw some of that footage. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we casted everyone. We put everyone in place. The hotel wasn't shut down. It was during the pandemic, but it
mm-hmm.
wasn't shut down. And we still operated with, I think, 35 people to look like 80 people in the space to animate it.
Yeah.
Right? And that was with drone only. Right? We did some stuff with the TV shows. So because of the work that's being done by Ryan, my partner,
mm-hmm.
We can offer drone services as well attached to his services.
Right.
So we get in through the door that way too.
Mm-hmm.
So we did Blown Away. It's that glass blowing competition show on Netflix.
Cool.
We do a lot of Mike Holmes, Holmes on Home stuff.
Right.
His Christmas special. So there's just lots of stuff that we've been fire starters, or fire masters on Food Network.
Okay.
Bachelor in Paradise. We did that.
I'm not even up to speed
Yeah.
on all those crazy shows where
Yeah,
people
I know.
find love on television.
Well, that's the thing. Is content became okay, it's all about reality based.
Yeah.
It's scripted stuff is tough.
Yeah.
Super tough. To crack through, and it's reality is sports reality. That stuff, content wise, is where it's at, right?
Yeah, fast production cycles, lots of content being produced.
Yeah, live. If it can be live, that's premium.
Right.
right? Like all your The Voice, X Factor, all those like live to air shows, they do such huge numbers because you have to tune in to watch it live.
Yeah, and that's this larger discussion of kind of like on demand or VOD versus television. How there's always a role for television, even if the distribution medium is online and moving away from cable and terrestrial networks. It's super interesting to say like broadcast is evolving. And there's even technology, like we use technology, like here, I've got this switcher that's like a broadcast box that we could live stream this conversation, and even in post, I'm not really going to edit much. I'm just going to switch between cameras.
How many people would you have had
back in the day? Oh
to
my
do
God.
this, right?
Even, I'll tell you this, even when this studio was built like 4 years ago, when we put the building together in 2017 for going on 5 years, I was using like Teradek. Those Teradek boxes?
Yeah, they're still around.
Yeah. As like my means of non-computer based streaming, which is a piece of junk compared to this Blackmagic gear.
Yeah.
So the evolution in just a few years of broadcast technology that's IP based, like digital broadcast tools for network streaming online on the internet, is just like mind boggling. I remember using that Teradek box that had a little LED screen on it. And you don't know if you're live on Facebook. It says you're live on Facebook, and then it stutters and it doesn't buffer properly, and single camera only, and so many problems.
Yeah, I know. It's wonderful. It's been democratized, right? Like production of content, production of films, TV has been democratized. So, but at the same time, that's because there's so many mediums in which to be able to consume content now. Right, your phone, your tablet, your laptop, your TV, out in the theater. There's many, many ways to consume content, and the appetite has not lessened. In fact, it's accelerated during the pandemic.
2 years. Oh yeah,
right. So therefore, there needs to be more content creators to be able to fulfill this appetite. Now, whether or not the content's great or not doesn't matter. It's fulfilling this appetite, right? But the content's starting to get better. Yeah, I know. It's like the attention span has gone from 2.5 hours, 3 hour movies. I remember when like movies were like 3 hours,
and you get excited about that because you're like, I can
you
lose
get so much
myself
more.
in it.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's just like, no, I can't stick that through anymore.
I could watch 3 movies in that time.
Yeah,
I wonder if people say that.
I don't. Well, I mean, on the business side, it is funny because that's like kind of in Toronto for TIFF. That's why TIFF is so popular, because a lot of buyers, distributors from all over, they come to Toronto because they can watch the most movies in one day here. Because it's all within like a 3-block radius.
Right.
Whereas in Cannes, it's like you got to walk everywhere. It's hot, and it's like you're fighting the crowds to get to that screening and lineup. Berlin is they're all kind of spread out. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Toronto is like, okay, I get to power through all of these screenings in one go and like make it like a 3-day trip, 3 to 4 day trip, So that's why Toronto is so popular from that standpoint.
From the industry standpoint, as a marketplace for film.
Yeah. Because they're programming for 12 to 18 months into the future, so they gotta power through. And season kind of starts at TIFF for the most part, like Venice TIFF. That's when everyone kind of wakes up from their summer slumber or their vacation, and then they go, okay, you know what? Let's start working. Go through till Cannes again in like May. So that's like the cycle. But with that, that's why filmmaking has been democratized, because there's such a huge appetite for it that we got to be able to allow for more people to make content.
Right.
So there's an opportunity there for companies like DJI and Blackmagic, to be able to create their prosumer products to be able to service that need. And now you're starting to see better and better. And now it's like narrative is starting to become so important.
I wanted to ask you about that, because there's a technological evolution that's happened that I think captured my imagination projecting into the future when I was a kid. I knew this was going to come, and I thought it was the most, talking about kind of like technology solving people's existential angst, potentially. It was one of the most, titillating concepts. And now it's here, and that's FPV. The idea, I think, that you can strap on a VR headset and remotely control a drone by flying.
Sure.
Surely solves one of the great, issues in the human dilemma, which is how to elevate one's consciousness beyond the earth, and this terrestrial problem is solved. I mean, how does it feel to fly a drone with you're using your hands on the remote control, but with your person?
Well, it's fully immersive. I mean, when the dreams of flying, like when you're like having dreams and you're flying through those dreams.
Right.
Like that's the feeling. Right? Like I'm not very good at it, I must say. I have people
crashed
who do
a few
that.
times.
I'm learning.
Flown in a building.
I'm learning.
You could never be Spider-Man.
No. That just reminds me of that meme or that one filter, that Spider-Man filter where everyone's getting like, you're the person being carried, you're Mary Jane being carried by Spider-Man through the city.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's
I don't
hilarious.
know. I'm old school.
Yeah, you gotta look that. Well, I mean, I'm too, but you can't avoid it sometimes.
I don't know how the hell I've created this amazing filter. I don't really kind of like know what the hell's going on the internet anymore. In the commercial internet,
Yeah.
It's crazy. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I just like feel like puking if I scroll more than 5 screens at a time these days. So I'm like 42. No, I'm not. I'm 40.
Oh,
how
I'm older than you.
Wait, 19. What years? Yeah, 42
I'm
this
79.
year. See?
1979.
And I'm acting like I'm 80 now.
Nah, no, it's all right. It's all right. It's just, you gotta, like music videos back in the day were defining the trends.
Yeah.
They would define the trends for what you would see later. That's what this is now. It's like Instagram, TikTok. They define trends, right? So you kind of have to keep I got to keep my finger on the pulse for that.
Yeah.
So it's from a professional standpoint. I try to stay attuned to the kids and know what's cap and what's not cap. You know what that means?
No, man.
Oh man, you gotta look that up.
Cap is cap the
That's
new
so cap.
Gucci? Is that the new Gucci, or is that different?
I don't even, that one I don't know.
Ooh, okay. Gucci. I learned that a couple years ago.
Wow.
It's all Gucci, which means like it's all good. Gucci is apparently like good, but also
Really?
luxurious and cool.
All right, sure.
It's tough to keep up. See,
Yeah, no, it is.
I know
tough
a couple
to keep up.
things.
I'm
that might be like new old school. I don't know.
Yeah, that's like for me. I'm like, okay, cool, Gucci, right? I don't have anything Gucci. It's too expensive.
Exactly. The
yeah.
literal understanding of the word. Okay, but let's talk about this. So this FPV thing.
Yeah.
And is it a revolution in the how is it just an experiential innovation for filmmakers, or is it enabling for cinematography as well?
I think it's definitely another tool for cinematography. And the reason why I say that is it's like being a bird, right? You want to capture those shots. Like every animation film, I don't care. You take a look at any animation film out there, like from Pixar, DreamWorks, or Sony, or Illumination, Minions. All those. If you watch that movie, there are shots there that are all FPV, like mimicking
100%.
FPV, because it's the easiest way to establish the narrative.
Right.
Right. Like you can literally follow a character and tell a story of a character within one shot.
Yeah.
And FPV allows for that because of the speed in which it operates. Whereas, traditional drones, they're more establishing the environment, right? And it can't go that fast. You kind of got a speed ramp from the character to that.
I think that's
environment.
a big point. It's a big point. The idea that like FPV naturally is presenting something in a format that is tough to mimic or replicate otherwise. And I wonder about this because I've got limited experience flying a drone. I literally just bought one, I don't know, a month ago to capture a fly-through of our studio.
Yeah.
And a number of wings later, my Mavic Air Mini 2, it's great because it's so tiny.
Well, you got the bumpers on it, right?
No, well, I got the bumpers sitting in a box. I haven't even taken them out of the box to put them on.
You would save your props,
I
your
know.
propellers.
Instead, I bought a big pack on Amazon of like 100 props, and I was just like, it's okay, man. I got to power through this shoot, and I'm just, this is a logistical laziness. It's like you're doing so much and you've got a vision for something that doing the simplest thing to save yourself trouble, it feels like a big mountain. Anyway, I've got the box. I'm going to put the prop protector on.
You didn't have to buy those props.
I know.
All those props,
if I had the rubber
bumpers,
thing.
Yeah, it just reminds me of, like, you remember, I don't know if you remember American Gladiator.
Yeah.
Okay, remember when they used to be in those spheres and they would be like pushing
Running.
them like
Yeah.
Okay, that's what those props are like.
Oh, totally.
Bumping into everything, it just protects everything.
Yeah.
You're chopping up your curtains.
Oh my God. And then the drone itself is falling from 16 feet in the studio on a concrete. It's really banged up. I'm like, it's okay. And then, the camera's kind of like, those DJI gimbals can break so easily.
Yes, they can.
I've gone through many pocket cameras. Their pocket camera model. Anyway, I'll scale it back a bit. Okay, so my experience is limited and stupid with drones, but I noticed this immediately in all the footage that I shot, and in getting it in the can was that weird disconnect that you need to get over as a drone pilot, from between the kind of tactile nature of driving this thing. And the fact that you can move it forward and back, left or right, up and down, and finding that flow between all those controls, that getting towards where it's innate, but then also matching in your brain, watching the drone fly to make sure that it's not. And now I'm flying inside, right? So it's particularly dangerous. Trying to make sure it's not hitting walls and so on.
Sure.
And with air currents coming out of like HVAC and open doors or windows and all this stuff, it's really
and people
precious.
Walking around. Yeah, sure.
Comparing that, against what you're also seeing on the camera, previewing the footage.
Yes.
And I think without FPV, it's just like it's so incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And it just feels like all like logistics, and I couldn't quite get the smoothest, longest shots that I wanted.
Yeah.
But I think with FPV, I'd probably be able to.
Yeah, FPV is like, it's pretty much like driving a car. Right, when you look at it, it's just that you can't really stop at a dime. You have to maneuver your way through it because you're continuous in motion, right? So, and the thing is, being able to maintain the shot in a fluidity, and so you don't lose the attention, because if you jerk one way, you lose your narrative.
So the headset would control the movement of the drone?
No,
or it's still the joystick.
It's still a joystick. So what you're
seeing,
seeing,
if I turn my head, it's
not. I mean, there is, like, people are trying to do that.
Okay.
But I think it doesn't make much sense, because you're basically looking at where you're flying, right? So that you're this big, and if there's this space, you can fit through it. If it's too small, you got to know that.
And it's also that thing of, like, cinematically, you're doing two things at once as a camera operator.
Yeah.
You are looking through the lens, and then you're looking around, because that idea of kind of, even as a bird, I assume, as a human, you're walking down the street, your brain is registering kind of the narrative of your journey, but you're also doing quick checks to make sure no one's going to hit you, or the people behind you aren't too close, or whatever it is. But your brain doesn't factor that into the story of you walking down the street.
No, that's just like the peripheral.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like the camera goes there.
Right.
And goes there.
Right.
It's just here, and then you're aware that there's something happening on your left and your right.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just being aware of that. So that's the beauty of the traditional drone side. I call it traditional. It's like making it old school. But where you have an operator for the drone that positions the drone in a way for the camera operator to then just control the camera on that drone independently.
Right.
So then you can get the shot that you need by just getting it in position, and then you're getting that unique shot, right? So that's where it depends on the need, and depends on the narrative, on what you're trying to say cinematically, and most people don't understand that. And it takes years to get that, or you either have that eye or you don't have that eye, or you have to also really like hone that, and then execute it, right? It's one thing to know how to do that. It's another thing to execute it, because now you're not controlling it physically. You're controlling it remotely. Right.
So how is the next generation, or speaking like that sounds silly, but how are drone pilots, people that are kind of like pursuing career paths in this, tooling up their knowledge and getting career expertise right now. Is this something that you guys are looking to kind of like help people with? I know you're also an educator, right, at the Toronto Film School. Is the school itself doing any of this or no?
No, not yet. I've been pushing it. I've been pitching it for a while now in terms of,
But it's pretty forward thinking for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you need to start thinking about it because, I mean, as a camera operator, right, you're really just thinking creatively, or as a DOP. You're thinking as cinematographer, you're thinking creatively. Now you got to learn about weather, navigation, air currents, aerodynamics.
Yeah, there's
It's like ground school. You basically have to take like 50 to 60% of ground school for being a pilot in order to be able to legally operate a drone. But it's all ground school, so it's all in theory. It's all learned, and it's like it's like driver's test, right? A written test. Then you have to do your flight test, which is basically your pre-flight procedures, and then how you operate if you have the wherewithal to operate, and then your post-flight procedures. So combining those two minds is sometimes a little far of a reach, but I think it's crucial for aspiring DOPs or camera operators to have that in their toolkit, is the drone. And that's why I think it would be invaluable just to teach like the ground school portion of it, or give that as an option to aspiring camera operators or DOPs, because then they can think from that standpoint too, not just on the ground.
So how is that? Are the commercial gigs that you guys are doing for television and if film, how do those come to be? Is it for the most part you're pitching the production on that type of footage, or do they come looking for it?
Usually it's by referral.
Okay.
So, I mean, the industry is pretty small. Not small. It's pretty
It's
tight.
big, but it's like everyone knows each
everyone
other.
knows each other.
Yeah.
Like your reputation, I always tell this to my students. Your reputation is your equity, right? You're only defined by the work that you can do, and that's it. And then your reputation. So your work has to speak for itself. And then it's, do people want to work with you?
Right.
Because it's not about working on one. It's working on many.
Yep.
Right? And those opportunities don't present themselves unless you have relationships in the industry to be able to present themselves to you, those opportunities, right? So that's why you really have to take a big stock in terms of who you are, what you do, and also who you work with. Like
These are
you're defined by the company you keep.
And these are great tips to end on, I think, for this first conversation about drones and kind of like being commercially engaged in being a pilot and offering, the footage. It's not just about having fun flying your drone. It's about kind of like, can you make a business out of it by creating compelling content that someone can use for something? So top tips are, it sounds like, networking, commercial networking or professional networking to fit yourself into the film industry or the media industry. Don't rely only on yourself. Build a team.
Yeah. If you're able to, like, I think that's the big thing.
Yeah. And then what would you say about any other recommendations for people looking to get into this stuff commercially, career path wise, crafting that career path in, being a drone pilot? Any other tips to do with how to look out for new technology or rely on technology that you know well? Anything to do with that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, the drone industry, there's so many opportunities that are going to start presenting themselves. Right now, it's like visual line of sight, and we call it VLOS, right? And that means is that when you're operating a drone, you have to keep it within a visual line of sight. You have to be able to see it with the naked eye. Then there's going to be beyond visual line of sight. That's where you start getting packages delivered by Amazon via drone, right? That is a thing.
Data drives the...
Yeah, it's going to be and that's coming for us too. Like, that's something that we have to forecast for and that we have to start planning for too, because now as a drone operator, you don't need me per se, because then it's just about getting the shot, right? The creative is the thing that you can't teach, or that can't be replicated by the AI, right? But you can program it to go from here to there so that now you're positioned to get that creative. So it goes back to, okay, focus on the creative, right? That's why so many people are starting to go into the creative industries, I feel. So if you're wanting to get into this industry, I would say that you have to creatively problem solve. You have to problem solve, but you have to be able to creatively problem solve
Mm-hmm.
in any situation. And if you're going to get into this business, I think with anything really, but in this particular for sure, because that it's evolving so quickly, and it doesn't have to be flying, like drones on the ground, like those Boston Dynamic dogs,
Right.
those dogs that dance.
Right.
That's a robot. That's a thing. Like that's real. That's here. That's doing work, taking away jobs, but creating jobs. In the water, same thing, right? Like remotely piloting everything is going to be a thing. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of space for everyone to be in it and to be able to do it. And that's why we're like, you know what? It's better for us to just specialize in what we do best, and that's the cinematic shot and being able to forward the narrative through drones. And then if anyone needs anything beyond, above and beyond that, then we can collaborate or to put them in the right direction with the right people, And the last thing I do want to impart with your lessons, the tips, pro tips, talent now is dime a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
Talent is not enough. Talent and hard work and relationships, that's what's important. Because it's not enough to be talented. Like there's lots of talented people. Like you said, look at TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of talented people, But combination of being able to follow through, work hard, and the relationships that you have is what's going to get you success nowadays. Not just the talent and someone's going to discover me. So
Right.
No, it's not like that no more.
Yeah, you have to put your talent to work.
Yeah.
And you have to make it work time and time again, and you have to build relationships.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, it was a pleasure having you in studio.
Yeah, man.
It was awesome to scratch the surface on
seriously.
some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to actually digging into some of your projects with you to look at how you
they're
guys
fun.
did stuff.
Oh, there's some fun stuff there.
Nice. We'll definitely do some follow-up content together.
I'll leave you a teaser. We were shot at by a bow and arrow, with someone with a bow and arrow.
What?
In Toronto.
What? In the city?
Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Cliffhanger. Awesome. Well, hopefully for our audience, you'll be able to hear more about that either on this podcast or a new podcast that we're about to launch in video format only, coming up later in the year. With that, thanks for coming in.
Yeah,
It was a
thank
pleasure
you.
to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Awesome.